And now, Jesper Kjær, hope I didn't do too much of a damage to your name. We move to regulatory perspectives on the use of big data in research. And you are the co-chair of the Big Data Steering Group in European Medicine Agency and director of the Data Analytics Center at the Danish Medicine Agency, and worked also with WHO. Please, the floor is yours.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity to present on this. And just a clarification, isn't research as regulatory, but we are trying to apply research for what we do in what we work with. So this is really one of the things that hopefully will help to enable what we heard Petra Ritter talk about. I mean, making sure that the private element in Europe also has the right incentives and the right mechanisms to really use big data and artificial intelligence. And I think for that specific purpose, that's where the regulatory world needs to take shape around these things. So just would like to share with you the vision and the public health benefits you can argue for the big data steering group work we have. Is really to enable a stronger regulatory system for both human and veterinary medicines, and enabling the real world data and analysis efficiently into the assessment process. This may sound trivial, but really isn't. So this is a big change management effort as well. Improved decision-making based on novel technologies and evidence from big data. So some of the elements which we just heard here, but really also caring for data quality and trustworthy data in this context. Really, the public health benefits we start to see in this is this should help to accelerate medicine's development. We see industry embracing some of these things. Now we need the regulatory space to embrace this as well. And ultimately, getting to the point of improved treatment outcomes and earlier patient access to new treatments. So if the regulators speak the same language as the researchers and as the private sector, we can definitely get to some further advancements within this field. The work we initiated between the heads of medicines agencies, so that's one of the elements I come from with the Danish Medicines Agency and then the European Medicines Agency collaboratively, was that in 2020 we issued our 10 recommendations to unlock the potential for big data for public health in the EU. We then took these recommendations on to concrete work plan activities and established the Big Data Steering Group in 2021, and now we are in 22 at the end of it, revising our work plan for the years to come. And we'll just have a quick look at that later. But in general, this is really the roadmap of how we are going to use big data in the regulatory space in Europe. Now, on the establishment of and the value creation of big data here, we both have a supply and a demand side on this. The supply side is really enabling all of these technologies by data discoverability, characterization, data quality, ensuring that data standardization, as we heard, so we really can accelerate the network skills as well. So we actually have the ability to deal with this kind of data and this way of thinking in the regulatory decision making. Analytics capabilities like the establishment of the Danish analytics centers in the Danish Medicines Agency, or the same with BfArM in Germany as well, and a number of other countries where this has happened. And then developing the processes, the governance, and the data sharing. On the other side of the demand of this is really to make sure that we pull this into our decision making. So all of the committees on the EMA and the regulatory network, whether that's for human medicinal products, whether it's for orphan diseases, whether it's for the safety analysis, whether it's for the scientific advice, really make sure this becomes integrated into the way we work. Also for the national competent authorities, so enabling us to support our local government, but also playing a collaborative effort in this work. Then the European Commission, the health technology assessment bodies and payers, and the EU health agencies in general. All of this is a stepwise approach in which we build value, in which we learn from the experiences, and then we align with the EU initiatives like the European Health Data Space. So this is really trailblazing on the regulatory use of this. And there are activities here also for European Health Data Space. We are developing the next iteration on this. What we really want to use real-world data analysis for is really for different steps in the life cycle management of drugs or approval. So it's really to support the planning and the validity of creating the evidence for new medicines. So that's the early stage. Is understand the clinical context as well. So really understanding the disease progression, the epidemiology, the clinical management, the drug utilization. But then furthermore, so for the safety of the citizens in Europe, investigate associations and impact in terms of effectiveness and safety, and obviously then leading to regulatory actions where that may be needed. Now, none of this really comes without challenges, and always you can always think about the glass being half full or half empty, but we are actually been very mindful about this over the last many years, and really identifying the operational, the technological, the methodological issues that we can actually see we needed to understand and deal with. Now, no obstacle can really not be overcome. It's all about decomposing it into manageable sizes. So really looking at some of the early use of real-world data in the drug development, working on that, published data sources policy for collaboration, data sharing. Some of that, we're actually building the tools that can do that. We are harmonizing on GDPR interpretations in Europe. So data anonymization where required, obviously as a technical mechanism. We are using the research communities in the landscaping of potential data sources, which is the NCEP catalog, so we know where to find the data. Those of you familiar with the FAIR principles will know the importance of the ability to find your data upfront. And then agreement on common data sets and data elements, data formats, terminology, again, really speaking the same language, agreeing on how we can then merge the data. Publication of studies and study protocols, so transparency is really important here. So really making use of the data for the common good. Common data models, protocols, compliance with the best methodological standards, building on academia again here, not reinventing anything that has already been shared, quality assurance and quality controls, and basically ensuring also long-term funding for some of these things. Now, these are really conceptual elements. Now let's get to something where it starts to become real, because this is an initiative we launched earlier this year. And it's getting to the point now that the first 4 analyses will actually be conducted towards the end of the year. Data analysis of real-world interrogation network, really as a regulatory pre-design of the European health data space by utilizing data in a network where we leave the data where it belongs, initially this first year in 10 different locations across multiple European countries. These data nodes then make up what then becomes a evidence of real-world healthcare data that becomes accessible to our use in the different committees. And I'm saying 4 analyses have already been planned. This will be 10 next year. And then it will really take off, because by the end of year 5 of this, we'll probably have been close to 400 different analyses. And we can see the need is there. The use of it is definitely also there. And as we start to pull this data together, we're looking into this year alone, 2-digit million European citizens worth of data. By the time in 5 years, we're probably into the 3-digit million citizens data kept local, safe, and secure for regulatory purposes to create the evidence. Now, who will ultimately benefit from Darwin EU? Well, it is really helping us to stimulate drug development, authorization, and post-authorization. So if it increases our capability in the network to use high-quality observational data for studies on the disease progression and on the use and on the safety of medicines, as we just alluded to earlier. Very specifically for patients, I'd just like to point to the fact that through the mechanism of industry getting a better evidence supporting decision-making with us and increased receptiveness of real-world evidence in the market authorization submissions, we do hope that we will reduce time and cost of drug development for the benefits of the citizens. That ultimately means, to the top point here, fast access to innovative medicines and safe and effective use. And then in between all of that, we can definitely accelerate the entire ecosystem by having these existing network structures of data at our fingertips. The entire work around big data in European space has actually been done through this plan I alluded to at the beginning, Darwin EU being one of the major initiatives in here. But none of this can really happen without having a very, very firm grasp on data quality and representativeness, data discoverability, being able to identify the right data in the right location, our skills in the EU network, our network processes to actually use that data, so upskill the competencies, and then really establish the network capability to analyze. And here we come together in what we call clusters of excellence, between Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, and so forth for different areas on AI, big data, and different types of methodology development. Then it continues from here with reaching out to the entire ecosystem, delivery of expert advice to the industry, the governance framework, international initiatives. So we're really aligned with the FDA, PMDA, WHO, and so forth. Stakeholder engagement. We actually just recently last week had an initiative with the patient experience and had discussion about what does that actually mean when we talk real world data and the use of that data and patient generated data for a future Europe. And then veterinary recommendations, which really sits as a separate initiative as well here. So being mindful about that. So final take home messages, really the big data steering group work plan towards 25 is really there now in shape and informed by stakeholders and experts. That's our roadmap to deliver data transformation, getting towards the 3-digit million citizens data and billions of data points to support our decision making. Engagement with the stakeholders to increase the utility of big data and development and use of medicines for patients. Many of the things we do here actually have patient representatives in different boards, different layers and different functions. And Darwin EU obviously being the mechanism that will support us as regulators for analysis and studies of large number of data sources by the use of high quality data from different areas in Europe. Being mindful about the careful use of real-world evidence that will enable innovative medicines to reach patients faster and support safe and effective use if used appropriately. And then obviously with the ambition that by 2025, the use of real-world evidence will have been enabled and the value have been established across the spectrum of regulatory use cases in every single committee where it really fits the purpose. If you're curious, want to stay up to date about these developments, we'd like to highlight you to our newsletter, our social media, where you can sign up to receive further information as we progress on these developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesper, and I encourage you very strongly to follow up with these different medias, the development. This really is something very vital. And before I let you to go back or start your food, actually the question to you is the same. This program was up to 25. What visions or ideas do you have past 25?
Very good question, but I felt inspired by our colleagues in research about digital twin and all of those capabilities. Getting to in silico methods, probably being some of the next things we want to do. It's actually an activity that we on the Horizon Europe are now exploring as regulators. Synthetic data, digital twins, and big data. So I think the next iteration is underway on top of establishing the data infrastructure that needs to be there to fuel those technologies, right? Good data quality gives you better research, gives you better results, right? So.
Sounds very promising, but a good question is that if we are up to there at some point when you have a full synthetic twin, who owns it? Me or someone else? Petra.
The interesting part about personal data and health data are personal data is that nobody owns them, not even the person who belongs to the personal data. And I think we have to go away from this notion of ownership, right? So it's not actually needed. It's more about controllership, who controls the data. I think this is very helpful.
Thank you.